This is the Acer Swift Go, and it happens to be the second Meteor Lake laptop that I've gotten into the studio. Now, this one comes packed with the exact same CPU as the Asus ZenBook that I reviewed not too long ago. It's the Intel Core Ultra 7 155H. And if you want to learn what's changed with Meteor Lake, I suggest you go back and watch that video. There'll be a link to that in the description down below. But if you're wondering what's changed overall in terms of performance, a lot. Is this the fastest laptop on the market now? No, Intel has finally caught up. They haven't really surpassed anybody, but they're now in the same sort of field. There are some things about these new Meteor Lake processors that aren't as good as the M series or even AMD's, but at least it can compete now, and that's the good news. Now, if you're talking about performance, the single core clock speeds took a nerf this year. In fact, they're slower than last year's P series processor and even the U series processor. But the multi-core speeds have taken a nice little boost, and it's up there now. It's playing in the same field as the 7000 series and probably the 8000 series from AMD. The MacBook Pro with M3 is still a faster chip. It's more in line with the M2. But if you're talking about like creative work, it's still a MacBook world. Like if you take something like Photoshop, for example, the MacBook Pro M3 just completely dusted AMD and Intel when it came to performance. Like, don't get me wrong, this is a nice buff from last year, but the media encoders just provide such a nice boost for the MacBook. Same holds true with Premiere Pro. In fact, I could even get Premiere Pro to render a file on the Acer Swift Go and the Asus ZenBook. And I'm chalking that down to being an Adobe problem because I had no problem running DaVinci Resolve on both of these laptops. Now, the performance on this is good in DaVinci Resolve, but the AMD Framework 13 did it a bit better, and then the MacBook Pro 14 with M3 rendered the file the fastest. If you're a developer, it's sort of the same story. AMD MacBook is probably better just because the CPU performance can be sustained higher for longer, whereas these Intel laptops tend to have to throttle things down, obviously, to keep it cooler, and with that, you're just having longer compile times. Now you're saying, well, what's the benefit then if it continues to like match or lose out to these two other platforms? Well, it's everything together. Like for one, the integrated GPU got the biggest bump out of everything. Like this is now an integrated GPU that competes with the RX 7800M. In some instances, it actually beats it out. And in other instances, it ties. It just depends on the application you're using. Like I did a 3D Mark Time Spy, it performed very well. It was right up there, along with the Asus ZenBook 14 that I just recently reviewed. And if you take a game like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, it was neck and neck with the RX 7800M. But there's still fan noise. Like if you put this guy on performance mode, it's going all the way up to 55 decibels, which is really loud for a laptop this thin. But if you drop it down to normal mode, it will reduce the fan noise to about 45. And then if you reduce it to silent mode, it's obviously going to be below 40. Now, the good news is you get much better performance on battery. So if you're not plugged into the wall and you need to do work, you're going to get about 90 to 95% of the performance, which is something we haven't seen on an Intel laptop at all. So this is good news if you want to like use your laptop on the plane and get full performance. Also, the other thing that comes with these laptops are brand new MPUs. And right now there's not a lot of software that's utilizing artificial intelligence, but there are some things you can check out. Like I've showed this in previous videos where you can like blur the background, you can have auto framing where the camera actually follows you. But the coolest thing happens to be the microphones. Like it just does such a better job of reducing background noise. Like listen to this example and see how well it completely cuts out the blow dryer. So the Acer Swift Go actually has a QHD webcam, and this looks so much better than the ZenBook 13 I tested a few days ago. Usually this light would completely blow out my face, but this camera is actually handling it pretty well. So right now I have no blow dryer going on. I want to see if this does the same thing where it completely reduces the sound of the blow dryer using AI. So right now, as you can see, I have a blow dryer behind my back. You guys let me know how the microphone still sounds. All the AI features are on. Can you hear me clearly? I expect you should hear the blow dryer, but it should be significantly lower. Now, the laptop itself is probably not my favorite for this price point. Like $999 with these type of specs is probably not the best deal. You're probably mostly playing for that Meteor Lake processor. Like for example, I just went like this to keep it clean and the sticker got caught in my sweater and completely ripped off. So this is kind of not looking good so far. The top of the lid is a little squishy. It is an aluminum alloy, but when you pick it up, it feels a lot like plastic just because they're trying to keep the weight down. I wish Acer would put some more R&D into their design. I feel like their laptops look very, very bland. And especially now, considering there's so many laptops to choose from, they kind of need to stick out. I'm not saying going crazy and put like red and RGB all over the place, but like try some stuff, you know? Like Asus is putting the lines and they got, you know, the ceramic lids and all this kind of stuff. They're trying to stick out. This looks like, you know, I bought this on eBay and then put the CPU inside. You have a lot of ports, which is the good news. 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, HDMI 2.1, USB 3.2. Then on the other side, you have your Kensington lock, another USB port, your combo audio jack, and a micro SD card. Now opening up is very easy. You can do it with one hand. The bottom does lift up a little bit, kind of like Asus's Ergo hinge, so you get that better airflow. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but the fans are already kicking on. The keyboard is okay. It's not the best keyboard. Like, look at this lid flex. Like, this thing goes all the way down. It's super soft. Even though the keys feel clicky, I'm just worried about longevity typing on this thing. It's just a little bit too soft for my needs. Intel Evo sticker, so there's certain requirements for this laptop that have to be met. Touchpad is bigger this year compared to the previous Acer Swift Go. But look, this is an ocean-bound glass touchpad. That's what Acer calls it. It's not glass, okay? It's plastic. And I don't like that, you know, because it kind of deceives the person buying this laptop. And look, the touchpad on this is not that great. Like, you're moving your finger on a plastic touchpad. It's not going to be a good user experience. The other thing I don't like, and this is very minor, is this wallpaper. Like, every time I move my mouse, the head of this guy just gets warped, and this will just give you like motion sickness after having to look at this for a very long time. So thankfully you can change that. The display is okay. Like, it's 1920 by 1200. It's only 60 Hertz. It's IPS. The color gamut's pretty good. The screen brightness is, you know, above average, but the color accuracy on this display is quite horrible. Like, a delta average of 5 is pretty bad. I'd love to keep it below 2. The good news though is you do have a 1440p webcam, and obviously you guys saw the quality when I did my microphone test. It's actually really good, much better than the webcam on the Asus ZenBook 14. Black bezels around the top. These are obviously plastic, but yeah, you know, like, this is a, you know, a very budget looking laptop for its price point. I feel like this should be $799. Like, they do have a $799 version of this, but you're dropping down to an Intel Core Ultra 5 and a little bit less RAM, like 8 gigabytes of RAM. And even then, I don't think that's worth it. This should be $799, not $999. I feel like that's a better price point. Speakers are on the bottom of the laptop. The sound quality is not that great. There's no bass, there's no depth to them. They're very tinny, but yes, they do produce sound. In fact, it's quite crazy that my smartphone produces better sound than the speakers on a laptop. Now, the internals are a bit better than the Asus ZenBook 14 I reviewed a few days ago. They actually have 2 copper heat pipes with 2 fans, which does help with the cooling, but obviously because of that, you are going to get louder fan noise. RAM is completely soldered onto the motherboard. As you can see, it's right there. You have a swappable Wi-Fi 6E card, and then you have 1 slot for an NVMe SSD, which you can obviously swap out for something bigger. Battery size is 65 watt hours, and I actually got really good battery life with this. 13 hours and 19 minutes before needing to charge. To give you guys more of a realistic approach to the battery life on this, if you're doing like anything hardcore, like you're taxing the CPU nonstop, you'll get about like 3 to 4 hours of use before having to charge. The idle time on Meteor Lake in general, really good, like really good stuff. Like, I don't feel nervous if I don't power off my laptop. I know it's going to be in the same spot after I open it up again and start using it. And if you're someone who's just doing like, you know, browsing the net, typing in Microsoft Office, battery life is going to be like 8 hours. So much better than previous generations. All right, so look, this is pretty much in line in terms of performance with the Asus ZenBook 14 that I tested. And it's a little bit more consistent in terms of its performance just because of the better cooling solution. But the laptop itself, like, it does feel kind of cheap for $999, you know? Like, if they discount this to $799, I'd be more open to recommending it. but there's a little bit too many sacrifices. The display is not color accurate. It does feel a bit cheap. The touchpad is plastic, which is unfortunate. There's a lot of little bendy parts and just like little things like the QC on these stickers coming off just by doing this kind of worries me. But yeah, in terms of raw performance, Acer did a pretty good job. Anyways, that wraps up my review of the Acer Swift Go. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.